Today we're going to talk about dry fire training. Here's the question. It's for dry fire practice setup. How do you and other top shooters actually dry practice? Mini stages, part-time usage, repetitions of a particular drill or stage, thoughts during practice, what you're trying to accomplish in a session, what does improvement look like, drills to improve transitions, particularly training the eyes and brains. Thanks in advance, great content. Okay, so there's a bunch of questions there. Instead, I'm just going to talk through what dry fire training looks like for me, and then I'll walk through and pick apart any of these questions that I haven't answered. Dry fire training is the best way for people, I'm sure familiar, to be familiar with your gun and gain skill because you just don't have enough time on the range. And for dry fire, you're going to be far more effective doing a little bit every day compared to doing a big chunk only one day a week. So if Saturday was dry fire day and you dry fired for 2 hours, that would not be as effective as 20 minutes every day of the week. I realize people get busy and have life and kids and significant others and all that kind of garbage, but if you can carve out 15 or 20 minutes a day just to focus on dry fire training, I think it'll be quite helpful if you want to get better at shooting. A couple things to make life easier is having your stuff kind of already pre-assembled or ready in the area. So for example, well, next to me I have a rig that's already got a pistol in it, magazines loaded with dummy rounds that have the proper weight, and the mag pouches and a timer. Oh, and grip enhancer. So the Pro Grip, this one's Double Alpha makes called Grips. There's a bunch of different products, but something that basically it's like lifter's chalk or rubbing alcohol that just dries out your hands to help your hands stick to the gun and less basically issues of your hands getting sweaty and having a tough time hanging on. So all the stuff's together in one spot. All I do if I want to start dry fire training is I just put my rig on and I'm ready to go. I don't have to hunt all over the house. Obviously for safety, maybe you have to get your gun out of the safe or something along those lines. But otherwise, everything's really accessible and ready to go. For dry fire, if it's 20 minutes a day, I suggest doing 3 to 5 minutes per drill, then move on to the next drill. So for a 20-minute dry fire session, 4 drills would be plenty. Even though 3 or 5 minutes doesn't sound like very much, while you're actually doing the drill, it can be eternity. I'll give you an example. There's a drill I really like called trigger control at speed. What that is having the gun aimed at the target with your finger, variations of finger, just touching the trigger out of contact. Maybe it's along the trigger guard. But wherever you have your finger, you do a random start on your par time. So you're hanging onto the gun with the proper grip. You're waiting here, beep, beep. And as soon as you hear the beep, you mash the trigger. Okay. Gun, hit the button again. Back up on eye line, beep. Beep. So doing that for 3 or 5 minutes is a long time with a lot of repetitions, and by the end, your hands should be tired. Let that sink in, because some people are like, oh, I dry fire for an hour. Man, my hands would be just like so tired, and I'd be ready to rage out because I'd be so irritated by not doing as well as I want to do. So the other part of that I kind of just hinted at was it's important to nitpick yourself when you dry fire. It doesn't have to be to an unhealthy level. If you want to, I mean, that's your thing. But you want to really nitpick every little thing you did, such as that drill I was just explaining. I could have pulled the trigger just a little bit faster. The sight moved just this way a little bit when I pressed the trigger. My support hand wasn't quite gripping onto the gun hard enough. Fill in the blank, those kind of things. But if you apply that to every drill you do, that'll go a long way towards improvement. So I'll normally have it planned out, what I want to do. That way I'm not kind of playing with my phone or watching TV or daydreaming in between. I'll be like, oh, I'm going to do some of that drill, the trigger control at speed, draws from a holster to just presenting it to sight picture, then target transitions for 3 or 4 targets, just going between all of them. First, not pressing the trigger, just assessing how the sight stops. Then the second one, I'll press the trigger. And then I want to do a movement drill where I simulate shooting some targets at one spot, shooting on the move to another spot. Just a simple off the top of my head. So doing 3 to 5 minutes on each of those drills, at the end of 20 minutes, your hands should be tired. And if you're constantly, after every little repetition, nitpicking yourself, you should be just to that simmering point of frustration where you're not going to, it's not too much where you're ready to throw your gun, sell them, and take up golf, but it's also not so little bit of involvement or engagement from you, they're like, yeah, I did pretty good. I'm like, great, I checked the box. So if you're just at that frustration level of simmering frustration, after 20 minutes, you should be ready for a break and do something else. It's also a good thing because that's a minimum time amount requirement from you to get very good results. So that's basically my 2 cents for dry firing and what I do. That could change up because maybe I want to do some simulated stages where I have a couple different like mock positions or a complicated order. You could do that for the day. You know, there's a bunch of different options. Maybe I want to practice moving for the whole time. I just want to do gun handling stuff the whole time, so draws and reloads. I want to work on developing my index, so I draw the pistol. The sight goes to where I'm looking. It could be whatever you want to be. And it should be kind of, well, I don't go to the gym, obviously, but you don't really want to neglect any area of your shooting. So it shouldn't be just gun handling every day, draws and reloads. But you shouldn't never do gun handling because you're always doing target transitions and always doing movement or never doing movement. You get the idea. You should just vary it and try to be good at a well-balanced shooter. So you're good at doing all the things, not just one thing that you're really good at and one thing you're not, or a specialty. So reading through the question, that's how I dry fire practice. Mini stages, yes, sometimes. It just depends. I'm going to just move it around because talking about a mini stage, that's a good way to give you kind of a snapshot of all the shooting skills compiled, a bunch of different tasks. You're changing your attention between a bunch of different things being asked of you. So maybe it's a draw, some static shooting, a reload while you're moving, then it's some shooting on the move, then it's near to far target transitions. It could be whatever you want it to be, but you'd have a bunch of little drills combined into this bigger drill that gives you a good snapshot of an area that you're weak or strong at. So then you could take that back, think, dude, I suck at shooting on the move. I kept feeling myself shift my attention to my dot, and I wasn't picking spots and targets. I'm going to work on that. So then you could work on just doing that part. Or maybe you have a tough time drawing the pistol where your hands just never find the right spot. My support hand's never at the same spot 2 times in a row. Then every day for a week, you could just work on drawing. Just making sure you draw the pistol to your eye line without any other part of your body moving. Your hands are in the right position. You have the right pressures you want. Whatever you need it to be. For part-time usage, yes, that's something I use sometimes, not all the time. Part-time, for people not familiar, you could set your timer, which if you don't use it, you could use apps, but it's smart to have a timer. One of the Pocket Pros or packs are the easiest one to recommend because they're they're around $130, which are half the price of some of the other ones. The really expensive one in the $300 range are nice, but I don't know that everyone needs to spend that much money just because people work hard for the money. So the Pocket Pro 2 is the one I like. I think they call it the Pro now. But that does all the features you want. They're $130-ish. Maybe you can find it cheaper on Amazon or something. And the part-time feature that allows you to change what the time is, but you'll get an initial beep, a set amount of time, whatever time you specify passes, and then you get a second beep. So if you want to practice drawing your pistol, simulating in dry fire, shooting 3 targets in a certain time limit, you could set your timer for, let's start at 4 seconds. You do that, it's like, oh man, I got a bunch of extra time. Okay, we got to push down that. Let's try 3.5. Oh, still making the time. Let's try 1.5 seconds. Nope, that was way too fast. So it's got to be somewhere between there. You can kind of keep moving. And if you train often, you'll get to the point where you could just, look at that. It's going to be about 2.2 seconds. That's where you start at, and that's what the time is. So that just comes with practice. But part-time is a good way to force you to go quicker and induce a little bit of pressure because you'll have the beep coming that you'll know you'll want to beat. So repetitions of a particular drill or stage, I don't like doing a set, like practice session where it's always the same drill. I think it should rotate around. I like doing variable setup stuff. So for the examples of target transitions, some near, some far, some steel targets, some paper targets, and it changes every day. Just because I don't want to have an order that I memorize or I could shoot in my sleep, you want to be good at all the areas of shooting. So just moving around from day to day is important. Focal depth changes are good. So if you have a fireplace, then a bookshelf, then a TV stand, you could bounce them around between moving stuff like that as opposed to just putting them on your wall, kind of with painter's tape right next to each other. That's not as good because all you're doing is just left to right, but not the focal depth change. You could put them on sticks. So like a target stand, you could attach them to and then move those around. Or like I said, if you have something to lean them against, a couch or a TV stand or a bookshelf or fireplace, you could do distance that way too. Or, I'm sorry, depth. for focal depth change. But those are all good things to do. Dry fire targets come in multiple scales. I get mine from Ben Steger Pro Shop. Shameless plug, but I'm sure there's other places that sell them also. They're not very much. So for a pack of them, they're around $10. It'll give you a year's worth of them. His next question is thoughts during practice. So I'll be focused on one thing normally while I'm doing the drill. So if it's target transitions, it'll likely be just the visual part, making sure I pick exactly where I want the dot to stop, being very sensitive if it goes past it or I use too much muscle and it comes bouncing to a stop. So just assessing that one part. If it's drawing, it might be, depending on where you're at or what you want to work on, maybe it's your hands being in the right spot. Maybe it's making sure the sight goes up to exactly where you're looking and doesn't go to a wrong spot or not needing to fish around to find the dot or the sight. It just kind of depends on that snapshot, where you're at in time. So then his next question, what are you trying to accomplish in a session? You might have something specific you struggle with, like tension or not looking at spots on target or staring at your sight. You could have the theme of that, be continuing to work on that, but it's kind of depend on what you're working on, what you're seeing in your live fire, whether it's matches or just practice, and what you want to work on. Because overall, you want to be good at all the challenges of shooting, not just one specific like standard where you could like some people have a standard and you get a little patch or a ribbon or a gizmo if you complete it in class. Those kind of things are fine, but I wouldn't send all my practice trying to work on just one standard or one drill. I like the variable setup stuff because you want to be good at shooting anything you see and not tied to it. Like, oh, if that target was at 12 yards, I'd be good, but instead it was at 15 and I just couldn't connect. I'm exaggerating, but only slightly. So what does improvement look like is this next question. Most people they underestimate what you can accomplish through dry fire. And it is a decent idea to keep benchmark times, or if you video yourself a couple times a year, or if you keep all your match videos saved or on your phone, because then you look through and at the time it might be frustrating because you don't feel like you're making the big gains you could. But at least for me, then looking back to the previous year, I'm like, oh man, that guy wasn't any good. I'm way better than that guy. Of course, talking about myself, because the little changes and things you get better and the little lessons along the way, it all just compiles. And the next thing you know, you're way better than you used to be, but it happens so gradually. It's easy to kind of get lost in the weeds, or for you through first person eyes, not tell the difference and where you're going. So you could do timed benchmarks such as just drawing to a sight picture. It used to be 1.4 seconds. Now it's 1.1 seconds. Something along those lines. Then his drills to improve transitions, particularly training the eyes and looking to the next target. That's going to happen kind of regardless of what you do. Just target transitions, having them set out in depth, different types of targets is good for that. Okay, those are the last of his questions. So anyway, I don't want my dry fire training to be the same every time. It should change up from day to day. Maybe there might be a common theme, such as constantly working on different ways to fight tension or different ways to grip the gun better, or make sure I train myself to clamp down hard with my support hand but relax my firing hand. But it's not going to be just the same thing every day, because that would be boring and definitely not the way you'd improve. So hopefully that's helpful. Gives you some things to think about if you're into the dry fire practice kind of thing. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. I guess like, share, subscribe if you want, but I appreciate you watching.